The girl stood in front of the dwarven smith, casually flirting her long, thin, furry tail around. She was flanked by 3 other girls. He wasn't too sure about what was going on or why it was going on, but he knew this cat girl was trouble. He had known she was since she reached adulthood. Her friends, an elf, a human, and a wolf girl had always offered him some kind of twist or bargain, or a secret flirt for some cheap service. He always rejected it, of course. He was a dwarf of honor after all. "Hello there, Genasi. Here to get me in trouble with my wife again for some cheap nails, HM?" he said with a raised brow. She blushed, shrank a bit, and cleared her throat nervously. No. I found something and I need you to tell me what it is, Mr. Verrick," she said with a blush as her tail nervously wrapped itself around her waist. She handed him a bundle of cloth, clearly quite a hefty one judging by how she held it. "Oh? What's up with this then? What's so important about it that you wrap it in a cloth and bring it to a blacksmith of all people?" he asked, taking the object. "I found it lodged in a dead smog dragon's spine," she said with little care. Her statement could be heard across the market, forcing the bustling place to suddenly come to a dead stop. "You did what?" he yelled at her. "Please, Genasi, don't tell me you went dragon hunting." He dropped the object and grabbed her. As much as this young lady annoyed him, he wouldn't dare let her get into any danger. She hastily placated him and shook her head. No, I didn't. I was hunting for rabbits in the Red Forest this morning. I found a dragon dead on the ground. I never fought anything, I swear." A crowd was starting to gather, and she reached into her backpack and pulled out proof. The dinner plate-sized scale of a smog dragon. A shining iridescent scale of gleaming silver and black, shining with the sun and sharp as a blade, carefully wrapped up in a mithril cloth. Genasi's friends gasped and stood shocked at the sight of it. The market went into a vicious uproar at the sight of a fresh dragon scale, and dozens of people swarmed the smith's shop to take a closer look. The town guard responded quickly, preventing a riotous uproar, and settled everyone back to their business while Genasi returned the dragon scale to its protective sleeve. "All right then. How'd you get this?" Verrick asked as he put the bundle of cloth on his work desk. "Like I said. Found it in a dead dragon. I already told the city guard about it. They already seized the corpse. I was allowed to keep a scale. I did, however, pull this thing out of its spine before they took it. Nobody I know knows more about metal than you, so here it is," Genasi replied. All right then. Let's see," Verrick said and unwrapped the cloth. Inside was an odd lump of twisted metal. An object that was cylindrical in shape, one end twisted and warped from a truly vicious impact, and the other end flat, covered in blood and soot. "Huh. Okay then." Verrick took the thing and cleaned it in a bucket of water, then took a look at it with a selection of magnifying glasses. "So, any thoughts?" Genasi asked after a few minutes. "Covered in dragon blood, splinters of thick mithril strong bone stuck inside grooves and shards. This definitely killed a dragon, or at the very least, hit a piece of dragon bone. Definitely some kind of projectile, but nothing I have ever seen. Whoever made this has a very strange ideal of metallurgy," Verrick said as he looked at the odd thing. Care to elaborate?" Genasi asked. Think of this thing to be just like an arrowhead without the shaft or fletch. But it's the most complicated arrowhead I have ever seen. A solid shell of hardened iron, surrounding a solid rod core of steel. Judging by how the shape of it warped, it's likely how it was designed. The soft edge of the iron shattered and fragmented like glass, and squashed itself in, forcing the rod in the center to receive all of its energy. That is amazing. Verrick mused over the object. Is that good or bad? Serenia, the elven girl, asked. To be honest, it's both amazing and terrifying. To make a thing like this is quite the feat to get it working to the point it kills a dragon, more so. But to make it fly enough it looks like this when it hits? That's terrifying. No enchantments, no runes. Just solid block of metal with a bit of engineering. This wasn't made by my people, or the mountain elves either. Something entirely different made this thing. I'd love to try to remake this, Verrick said with a strange grin. Okay. So now what? Genasi asked. I have no idea. I'd love to meet the person who made this. It's ingenious. I have no idea how they would go about using it though. It takes a stupid amount of force to warp metal of this grade so badly. I hope whoever built it only uses it for killing corrupted dragons though. I shudder to think of what a thing like this would do to a man or mare. Verrick said. Okay. Well, the city guard should be done by now. I guess I can go there and try to investigate now. Might find more of them. Genasi said with a smile. Well, it's a paltry sum, but here's 20 coppers for you. No sense in letting good metal go to waste. Verrick said. He handed her 20 coppers for the object and began to heat up his smeltery. Now you lot go. I have work to do. The four girls reveled at the sight of 20 copper coins, despite the 30-weight gold dragon scale they had with them, and excitedly charged away towards the Adventurers Guild. The guild was chuffed to say the least on the acquisition of a smog dragon scale, and the girls left it there so its exact value and application could be tested properly. With a finder's fee of 5 gold coins, the four hastily hurried to the site of the dragon's corpse in hopes they might scavenge some more. Alas, the city guard had long since picked the site clean, leaving nothing but an enormous gray bloodstain on the ground. Genasi could clearly make out the outline of where the dragon came through the trees. It was hit low, and hit hard, leaving a hole in the tree canopy before smashing into the forest floor. The girls all gathered around the bloodstain, and Amari, the wolf girl, was the only one excited to see the stain on the ground, as she gleefully gathered up the residue from the dragon's blood everywhere she could. Serenia and Marie, the human bard, scouted around the area to see if anything could be found. Just as the party was clearing things up, Serenia's ears perked up. Thunder? She said, looking around. What? Genasi asked as she sifted through some grass. Thunder. I just heard it coming from the southwest. Serenia replied. I don't hear anything. Amari replied, angling her ears to meet the noise. It went ow, there it is. Serenia said. Amari's ears perked up and followed the sound as well. Oh. I heard that one. Strange. Mima didn't call for any storms for weeks. Not a cloud anywhere. A wizard practicing magic somewhere maybe? But alas, friends, no. The wizards and mages of yon fair kingdom hath been sent to yon harrowing place this tide. Magic, 'tis short in supply. Marie said, showing her unique upbringing. Do you think we should take a look and find out? Serenia asked. Well, I don't know. Maybe we should cause. What if that? Another blast of distant thunder. Is that what killed the dragon? Maybe we should scout it at least and tell the guard. All for scouting? Genasi asked. Aye. The other three replied. With that, the four ladies trudged through the Emberwood forest. Eventually, however, the thunderous roar ceased, and the only thing they could use to guide them was a general direction. Eventually, however, they left the forest, clear on the other side, and stopped dead in their tracks. The feeling of curiosity gave way to sheer terrified horror as the result of a battle of biblical proportions lay before them, the ground they walked on saturated in blood. Nobbins, trolls, even a few gargoyles lay dead on the ground in the aftermath of a massive battle. Not so much a battle as a massacre of excessive proportions. After vomiting profusely, the girls' curiosity took them over and they start investigating what atrocity happened. Poor Genasi saw the upper torso of a troll, appearing as if a fireball tore it clean away and cast it aside. A group of Nabans lay dead, riddled with small holes, some of which seemed powerful enough to tear off arms and legs. It was as if a storm of invisible glass arrows hit them like a storm and shredded them to pieces. Another troll, a very large one, had its head completely vanished, pieces of its bone and skull lodged into nearby trees. A gargoyle, one of the most dangerous beasts in the land, had been torn clean through, a giant hole right through the torso, and another gargoyle had both of its legs vanished from it. But one particular corpse, the simple body of a Naban, stood out from the rest. It lay on its belly, a mangled mess of flesh and bone that looked like it had been squashed by a giant pipe. Hark! This one be the most strange. I dare say a giant smacked this one with a large tree, Marie said as she investigated the body. The other girls carefully trudged through the blood and gore over to Marie and likewise looked at the body. A huge strange gash, similar to that of a giant snake with a very thin, heavy body, had been left on the earth. This poor Naban had been squashed by it. Hark! There be two of these tracks. Is this perchance, a new foul denizen of the deep? Marie said as she pointed to the other track, parallel to the one that squished the Naban. I sure hope not, Amari said. She yelped, a quick woofy yelp that meant she saw something shiny. She charged at it, and when she crested the hilltop nearby, she squealed. What in the hell? What are all these? The other girls charged after her and saw the hilltop was covered in strange brass objects. Strangely shaped empty cylinders, some large, most small, with an odd cylindrical shape that tapered off to a point. Amari had to cover her nose, not used to the strange burnt smell of the objects. But the two large tracks, like giant snakes, had carved a clearly visible path through the forest. Something big happened here. Ugh! I don't like this. What kind of monster spits brass cylinders and slaughters 5 trolls, 60 Nabans, and 3 gargoyles? We need to tell, Genasi said. I very much agree, dear sister. Mayhaps they can better deal with this fell beast. Hark! What be that noise? It approacheth, Amari yelled. Hide, Genasi said, and the 4 hastily hid in the trees. The 4 were taken aback, Genasi almost being crushed as a strange metal machine with round wheels, an unpowered wagon or magical enchantment of some kind charged over the hill, barely missing taking off her head. The monster machine roared and landed with a heavy thud in the grassy knoll, its wheels carving a path, splattering the blood and mud-soaked grass in all directions. The 4 terrified girls cowered behind a few trees as the machine roared angrily, deploying some kind of large mechanical arm with a heavy claw. It painstakingly collected whatever intact bodies it could find, loaded them into the flatbed in the back, then, quick as it came, charged back up the hill and vanished into the brush. The 4 stood dumbfounded, awed, terrified, just staring at the trail of devastation it left. So, Genasi said, we're not going to inform the guard, right? She asked. Her 3 friends said nope. We're all going to go after that thing like we have something to prove, and this will all end in a crazy adventure that will almost get us killed like 100 times, aren't we? Genasi said again. Yup. They all replied. Gods above, not again, Genasi said in frustration as her arm was grabbed and dragged along with them. The machine was long gone. Despite its heavy metal, it was shockingly fast and had vanished through the destroyed forestry with speed never seen. The girls simply followed the obvious trail of debris, blood, and its strange wheel tracks. Eventually, the base of the Cragmire Mountain presented itself, only for the tracks to start deftly climbing up a road that had been carved into the mountain. The girls approached and continued following the tracks, with Amari commenting on how it was only a few days old judging by the raw sand and lack of protective coating on it. They followed the road for a mile, the freshly carved edifice snaking up the mountain's southern peak, before coming across a small clearing between 2 cliffsides. Wide enough for traffic, but also wide enough for youngling red dragons to snake through during their migrations. Serenia was the first to notice the distinct four-fingered claw marks in the rocks. Hold it! This is Red Dragon territory. It's a migration point. Serenia yelled as they approached. We've come this far. Let's just see what's on the other side, then run like hell once we know. Come on. It's just over that crest. Amari commanded and headed towards the gap in the rock face. They moved up and entered the clearing. Their jaws dropped, shock and awe overcoming them as they surveyed the center of the valley. The mountain was a long dead volcano, with 5 peaks loosely shaped like a pentagram, with a huge crater in the center of it all. Inside this crater sat a huge complex with high walls made of strange woven metal and heavy-set stone. The infamous red dragons flew in many directions, perching themselves atop strange metal and wood bars mounted in the cliff sides, or casually wandering about inside of large, perfectly carved holes dug into the mountainside. Nestled inside the large complex at the center were 2 buildings, strange structures in their own right. One was built like an ancient cathedral, small, but intricately made with careful attention to detail. The other was just a massive box with a large sloped roof, multiple chimneys and exhausts atop the roof, with a massive door on one side. The floors of this complex were a mixture of common sand, or the strange rock that had been used to pave the floor. Parked with care, on these paved sections were some strange metal contraptions, including the very one they chased here, its cargo bed now empty of corpses. The girls stood dumbstruck as the large square building's doors loudly and slowly opened, to reveal another huge machine similar to the one they chased. This one's cargo bed, however, loaded to the brim with filled versions of those strange brass objects they found. Suddenly a roar was heard from their right as another odd vehicle came barreling up the road into the hill. The girls screamed as the thing charged at them, barely stopping inches from their faces. They stared at the odd thing as strange humming noise, like the loud, repetitive beating of a dragon's wings, emanated from the front of its odd, rectangular face. A thing opened up to its left, a door, followed by 2 heavy boots hitting the ground, and a human, covered in heavy scarlet red leather cloaks, gilded with gold trim, walked towards them. He looked at them and went to the back, where the girls noticed the machine had passengers, 6 red dragon younglings riding in the back, looking all too smug for some reason. So this world has elves and cat girls? The man asked his passengers. That and more. One of the dragons said. At what point were you going to tell me this? The man asked again. This was funnier. All of the 6 dragons said at once, followed by them chuckling at the man's expense. Great. My clients are frat boys. The man said, shaking his head in frustration as the passengers laughed at him. The man approached and looked carefully at the group of confused, terrified women. An elf. A lupin, a nicapora, and some chick dressed like it's the 17th century for some reason. He said, looking at them. I wouldn't exactly call that dress, to be honest. One of the dragons yelled over the chuckling. Oh, there's the migraine. Yep. There it is. Migraine's hit. That's nice. Oh God, I don't get paid enough for this. He said again as he laid his head against the metal machine. You weren't getting paid at all. One of the dragons commented. That's my damn point, you schmuck. The man yelled back in frustration to a chorus of laughter from his passengers. The man shrugged his shoulders and with a frustrated sigh, held out his hand in greeting to the group. Hi Howie. Name's Caliban. Just call me Cal. I own the place. Apparently. The 4 stood there, once again their jaws opened in shock as they gingerly reached out to greet him. Cal sighed in annoyance as the chorus of mockery from behind them grew ever louder. Okay. So. Get in. Find a spot. Or something. Cal said, moving aside and gesturing for the 4 terrified women to get on board. But we. I said get in. Caliban commanded with far more authority than he needed. His outburst even silenced the dragons. The women suddenly made a mad scramble to get in the back, nearly climbing over each other to secure a seat among the dragons. Each girl sat in the best open seat, unfortunately sandwiched between the juvenile beasts. Each girl feeling more and more uncomfortable as the beasts regarded them closely. The roar of the machine's heart echoed through the valley, the machine moving in earnest with an angered rumble. Could have been in an eternal war in heaven, but no, I'm here. Could have been reincarnated as a pastry chef, but no, I'm here. Could have just stayed the hell home and learned how to pay taxes. But no. I am here. What did I do to deserve this? Caliban said, his voice mildly muffled but still audible from inside the machine's body. The mechanical beast trundled along for a few minutes before entering a clearing near a sheer cliff. All right, you crazy turkeys. Hey, race your drop-off, now scram. Caliban yelled. The dragons all dismounted and stood at the edge of the cliff, each one attempting to coax each other off the sheer drop into the treeline below. They ranted and raved at each other for a time before Caliban hit something inside the cabin. A loud, obnoxious noise that reverberated through the valley suddenly burst from the machine's front end, sending all 6 dragons suddenly scrambling off the cliff's edge. All of them made it, flapping their wings furiously to stop themselves from slamming into the rock below to a chorus of Caliban's mocking laughter. The girls all were amazed at the sight, but quickly huddled up together in the seats closest to the front as Caliban took them back towards the mountain pass. The girls looked terrified, but were unable to escape owing to how fast the machine was moving and cowered together in the back. The machine quickly made its way through the huge gates, down a mountain pass and towards the massive structures at the crater's center. Caliban parked in a specific place and got out of the machine. "Get out," he commanded. All 4 girls scrambled out of the back onto the floor and marveled in fear and awe at the size of the buildings around them. "Right. That," Caliban pointed at the cathedral-like structure, "is my house. Go in, I'll make us some tea. Or coffee. Or something." Caliban then pointed to the massive structure nearby. "That is my war factory. Don't go in there without me. That place has machines that will remove limbs and turn you into soupy goo if you aren't careful. Got that?" The 4 of them nodded nervously and wandered in the smaller building. They were taken aback by its interior as much as its exterior. Complete opposites. On the outside, a precision-carved, carefully managed edifice of stone and mortar made to fit precisely in a beautiful pattern of fervor and faith. On the inside, a disheveled mess of machine parts, loose components, scrap metal, and the perfect match for what can be described as before wife. It was neat enough they could move about and find a comfy spot, clean enough their feet did not squelch underfoot. But still, the 4 could clearly see, this was a quintessential man cave. Huh. It seems even across worlds. Men are all pretty much alike. This looks like my older brother's study. Genasi said idly. Across worlds? Pray tell, fair friend, what mean thou by this? Marie asked as she sat on a chair. A strangely comfortable chair that made her coo like a dove as she sank into it. Oh, come on, Marie. The machines with wheels, the huge steel building that makes machines. There's no way he's from around here. He even said so himself. He had no idea what elves or demi-men were. He must have been summoned. But by whom? Serenia said with a sigh. The gods often create heroes from thin air in response to a major cataclysm. Is he a summoned one? He must be. Amari said. Impossible. Besides, the smog dragons, who have always been a threat, even to the red dragons, have always been under control. Reasonably speaking. Nobbins, gargoyles, that type haven't been that much of a challenge for the local guardsmen or even the Adventurers Guild. Why even is he here? And more importantly, why summon his entire house? Serenia replied with a sigh. I heard not on the vine pertaining to aught of concern, I fear. Perhaps the gods have erred or acted in jest. Marie said, her voice strangely calm as she sank into her comfy chair. Or maybe this guy is here because there's something in the future we're going to need him for. And because of the complexity of his machinery, he needs time to prepare. Genasi said. Oh. The other three replied in turn. The door opened and in walked the subject of their conversation, shirtless, carrying a collection of brightly colored cylinders and some strange packet. Ugh. Can't be bothered to boil the kettle. So here. Have some sodas, he said and casually handed each girl one of the objects. They were cylindrical with strange markings, tops with odd openings, and a red coloration. What is this? Genasi asked. Observe, Caliban said. He flipped the odd cap on the top of it, a strange whoosh sound coming from the object. Caliban then chugged it down and emptied it, crushing the cylinder flat on his forehead, then tossing it in a nearby basket. Oh, God, that tats is good. God, I'm so glad I spent money on those licenses. Cal then sat there expectantly and waited for them. The four girls carefully considered each other. Why do you have no shirt? Marie asked. Invited guests get the courtesy of a dressed host and a clean home. You are uninvited and unexpected. Therefore you get the sweaty muscle of a man after a hard day of work and a can of soda. He glared at them with an angry spark in his eyes. The girls all swapped glances, popped the strange tops and swallowed nervously at the odd liquid bubbling around inside it. They all tentatively took a sip of it. Marie broke her usual stoic resolve and squealed in delight before chugging the contents of the can down before belching loudly and shamelessly, much to her friend's shock. The other three tentatively sipped their own drinks. Genasi didn't like it much, the bubbling too much, but she drank it due to the sugary taste. Amari licked at it like a curious puppy and then slurped it down, trying to shove her tongue in the can to try slurp up every last drop. Serenia gently tasted it, shrugged and drank it like a lady sipping tea. She did not expect the loud belch at the end, and blushed as she held her hands over her mouth. Mixed response. Figured as much, not everyone likes Coca-Cola. But I do have other flavors and other drinks, including milkshakes and fruit juice. But that's for guests. Maybe next time. So, you have questions? Ask them, Cal said with a smirk. So, are you a human? Amari asked gently. Last I checked, yeah. Have a few mods, but nothing serious. To answer your question, mods means these, Cal said, and a long blade suddenly appeared out of his right forearm. It was razor sharp, shining a blue/green, and looked as vicious as can be, appearing more like a fang of a snake. Caliban quickly retracted it, then sat with a smile. Cybernetics. Mechanical augmentation. In short, I chop off arm, put machine in place. Now I have machine arm. The four girls looked terrified, shocked, and genuinely distressed at the sight. He simply sat there and waited for more questions. Eventually, Serenia gingerly raised a hand. What are those? Machines? How to explain? Do your people have steam engines or devices that use heat from boiling water to move machinery? Cal asked. Why yes actually. Genasi replied. That makes my job easier. That thing is called a truck. It uses basically the same principle as a steam engine does. Converting the heat energy of burning coal or wood to heat water, then using the steam to turn a mechanism to convert that energy into motion. That machine uses much the same principle, only a lot more efficient and a lot faster. Your fuel is steam and wood. My system just cuts out a few steps of middleman and makes it a lot more powerful, as you saw. Cal replied. The girl sat in silence for a few seconds and considered his words. Genasi said as she understood what he was talking about. Her less mechanically inclined friends didn't quite get it and just sat there with scrunched expressions trying to understand. I'll give you a good explanation later. Maybe. If you behave nicely. Now, my turn. cat girls, wolf girls, elf, human. What else is there? Is this the 4 races, or is there more? Cal asked. Catkin, wolfkin, foxkin, dragonkin, human, elven. There's also dryads, faekin, satyrs, deerkin, demonkind, and divinekind. You already know the dragonkin. They were the... What did you call them? Fretboy Serenia replied. Well, that's a full roster right there. God. Half the people I know would have sold their souls to the lowest bidder to be where I am today. Guess it ain't all bad. All right, your turn. Cal replied. I've never seen a man like you. Ever. You know. Especially not with the whole machine arm thing. What are you? Marie asked. Mixed. As mixed as it gets. Caucasian, Native American, Latina, and African American. Specifically, Texas, Sioux, Mexico, Ghana. I'm a mix of all 4. In my old world, that combination is as rare as a politician who speaks the truth. And that's saying a lot right there. Short answer, I'm just a human, I just have an interesting lineage. But anyway, my turn. Magic. Is it a thing here? Cal asked. Yes. All 4 girls replied, then each raised a hand to conjure a simple spell. Marie made a ball of snow, Genasi a ball of fire, Serenia a ball of electricity, and Amari a ball of swirling leaves. Cool. Didn't have magic in my world. Only machinery. Which in its own right, considering what we did, was its own magic. Cal said and stood up to the nearby closet. What did you do with your machines exactly? Amari asked. Communicated with millions of people all at once as if face-to-face across any distance via the internet, instantly. Used machinery to haul millions of tons of cargo per day across tens of thousands of miles via trains, trucks, ship, and planes. Defied gravity by flying with aircraft such as helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, gliders. Perfected the art of chemistry to make cures for thousands of horrible diseases. Used machines to put human footprints on the moon. Then on another planet. Then eventually breaking the bonds of the cradle and establishing new routes around new worlds far from home. That kind of stuff. Cal explained as he redressed himself, putting on some kind of odd uniform. The 4 sat open-mouthed at the explanation, and Caliban simply carried on as normal. He stepped away from his closet, wearing a full uniform of some kind, and carrying a very nasty-looking piece of equipment on his shoulder. What the hell are you wearing? Genasi asked. Combat armor, standard issue. Battle dress uniform or BDU unders, with a plate carrier, cargo pants, carry-all backpack, mag pouches, packs, all colored a nice gentle blue, and my baby Jessica. My gun. Love this gun. Made it myself. By hand. Cal said, proudly brandishing the oddly blue-colored metal machine. What? Pray tell, is that menacing machine? It scares me, Marie said as she looked at it. This? The AK-DMR platform custom-made rifle, .408 caliber, 60 rounds, midnight blue with a stub grip, bipod, and stock. My Jessica. Pretty, ain't she? Yes, she is. But to answer your question, a gun is an advanced freedom delivery mechanism. In your terms, ID say it's like a very powerful fireball spell. Only smaller, lethaler, and significantly harder to dodge. And sexier. Cal said with a chuckle. That gray/blue dragon dude I shot earlier sure as hell figured that part out. Hee. The girls' faces all went white with horror as they suddenly knew who took the smog dragon down. One of the deadliest and hardest to fight beasts in the whole world was killed by that machine, and this random guy who seemed a bit too casual about it. Of course, that was just .408 Chaitak. I genuinely wonder what damage I could have done with a bigger shell. Probably would have blown it in half. Me? Anyway. Come on, ladies, you have outstayed your welcome. Let's get you home before dark. Cal said and gestured for them all to leave. Each girl was scared out of her mind, but eventually left their seats. The full-blown silent panic hit them, however, when their ride, a full-grown crimson elder dragon, stood in front of them. He was twice the size of Caliban's small house. Covered in nearly blood-red mithril-touched scales with his massive wings gently floating with the wind. His huge head and horns appeared polished and freshly cleaned as if he had just had a bath. The beast visibly smirked at them and lay on the ground, putting a leg to the side and offering it as a ramp to get on his back. Caliban didn't give them a chance to do much else as he impatiently hurried them aboard and made sure they wore seatbelts. Each girl shared glances of shock, awe, and terror at the sight of them being strapped into a saddle atop an elder red dragon. Caliban didn't go with them, he climbed down. You sure you're okay to fly them home, Atirius? I can understand if you change your mind. Cal said. I am happy to be of help. In exchange for an extra serving of that tasty cake thing you make. We do not work for free after all. The dragon's voice grumbled in response. That's the spirit. I'm going to try bear hunting today. Little gamey, but hey, I know how to prepare a good bear stew. See you for dinner. Caliban said with a smile and grabbed a smaller truck from the parked machinery nearby. A smaller dragon, a youngling, presumably hopped in the machine with him, and the two drove off into the forest. The girls' owl squealed in terror as the enormous leathery wings flapped up, forcing them off the ground in one fluid motion. For the first time in history, each girl saw her home world from the skies. Forsooth. Such beauty, Marie said between gasps of terror.